we will move on to the next topic. The next talk is by Shri Prabhav, and the talk is on the targeting of Brahmins by missionaries. Shri Prabhav actually was working for an anti-evangelical organization. During that time, he had the opportunity to collect all the hard references where there are very clear hard documentations about the missionaries targeting Brahmins. Over to you, Sri Prabhu.
So let me just share my screen first so that I can start the presentation. Okay, so namaste one and all. In this presentation, my topic is basically going to be about why and how did missionaries target Brahmins, right? And this is coming out of, as Dr. Nagaraj Paturi has explained, my work on this very same thing. And this comes from the works of Sitaram Goyalji and others, such others who are, who have brought out the real Indian history, right? And first, I'll let you know how the presentation will go, forward. So these are the table of contents. I'll explain the reasons why they targeted Brahmins and what methods did they use. I mean, I'm not focusing on all the methods. It's not a comprehensive thing of the how, because there are too many, but I'm focusing on very two important historical narratives, and those are very important to us as people who are dharmics. And then in the future, what we can do to avoid this, right? So I'm going to end with that. So this is the table of contents. And now let's look at the reasons why. So these are again divided into the main three parts of, why it happened. The first would be the historical reasons, right? Historically, Brahmins have always been the custodians of academic knowledge and influence over other parts of society, or at least that's how the evangelists or the missionaries viewed Brahmins, right? And then we will also get into the community reasons why. And because again, this is the perceived hierarchy that the evangelists in their mind have formed. It's a pyramidal structure, which is similar to their casta system. This is not actually the reality, ground reality, grassroots reality of India, right? So that would be the community reasons, and the overall agenda is obviously to disrupt the religious and economic stability of the Hindu society for Christian gain, right? So this is what I'm going to be talking about. First, let's look at the historical reasons. So when we look at people like Robert Caldwell, in his book, The Tinnevelly Shanars, which was written in like 1850, right? And this is, you can actually look at this book. This book is available on Google Books. So on page 74, you have a whole narrative about why you should target, Brahmins to first get Christianized. And the actual quote that he uses for that is, Christianize the Brahmins to shine the light of Christ on the Hindus, right? First, that's the root or the target where you have to hit to actually get going, is what Robert Caldwell is saying here. And from the Indological perspective, I have another source, which is India, What It Can Teach Us. And this was obviously written by, as all of us know, Max Muller. And right in the very beginning of the book, on page 25, he says the portrayal of Brahmins as a repressive class is a very important thing for us to spread our word. He's probably talking about the word of Christ, but he's not explicitly mentioning that. And he also highlights that, this narrative can give the colonialists who have come to India to achieve missionary objectives, right? He discusses all this in length. And this is primarily the main evidence for the historical reasons. And the main historical reason for it is Brahmins were targeted due to their influential role as custodians of Vedic knowledge and also societal leaders in some parts of the country. right? Missionaries believed that converting Brahmins would lead to a broader acceptance of Christianity. And this is again, the picture I've put up here is of literacy, right? Somebody is writing something. We were not a culture of literacy. We were not focusing on writing things down. We were more of an oral culture. Especially the Brahmins had a way of life where they transmitted knowledge through oral, methodology. But here, the way that they have targeted Brahmins is by introducing the word, right? As soon as the word, basically whatever literacy was introduced, the first people who got into writing and who started writing were the Brahmins. And it facilitated the spread of Christianity among India due to those Brahmins, right? So it is this kind of thing where, from the broader perspective, if you look at it, it is both the Brahmins who are getting, targeted, as well as the Brahmins who are cooperating to this, right? So this kind of a thing was happening in India, and this is the historical reason why it happened, right? And for that, as we saw in the previous slide, we have the evidences very clearly. Robert Caldwell, as we all know, is a missionary, and he wanted to Christianize the Brahmins first and target them. That was his first thing, right? And then if we look at the community reasons next, right? So here we can see there is a history, evidence from history, wherein probably we all are very familiar with this person called Joseph Francois Dupois. In a letter dated 1750, he emphasized targeting Brahmins as a strategic move, right? And he says that their destruction, here is referring to Brahmins, their destruction is most important for us to completely replace Hinduism with Christianity in India. For their missionary agenda to succeed, he saw Brahmins as the, stop thing, right? The Brahmins are the people who are going forward and, are the torch bearers of Dharma, basically, and are taking Dharma forward. So if we do not destroy them completely, we cannot replace Hinduism with Christianity, is what he's saying, right? And again, one of the other famous Indologists, James Mill, he also says in his book, The History of British India, he discusses, and by the way, this is a person, an Indologist, who is neither, completely towards the agenda of, Indian nationalism, or completely towards the agenda of modern Indologists, right? So he in his book discusses that the perceptions of Brahmins as the pinnacle of the Varna system, making their conversion a symbolic conquest, right? For them, for these people, it was also very important to convert Brahmins because it was a conquest. It was a very symbolic conquest. If you convert a Brahmin, say a person is there who is a Brahmin and you convert them, you can show them to the rest of the community and say, see, the person who your God has accepted, or your God has given him the permission, and you are able to only access God through this person. I have converted that person, and when that person has accepted my God, you are also going to accept my God, and such that it is seen as a conquest. And the overall agenda, even in 2024, Brahmins were seen as the highest, and even now they are seen, and this is again a false narrative. It is not necessarily so in practice at all. And converting Brahmins was viewed as a significant achievement by missionaries in the previous era. Even now, same practices continue, where evangelists are targeting Brahmins. People always say that, people from the lower communities are targeted by evangelists. That's true to an extent, but then they also are targeting the so-called highest part of the Varna pyramid, which they have in their minds, which is not a practical reality, right? So this is the community reason. And then how did they do it? I have 2 points here. So the first point is they planned to loot temple wealth. It was a very, very systematic attempt. And this is actually the reason why today Hindu temples are not free. Currently, we do not know why the government has, government is not taking active steps towards this, right? To actually free Hindu temples. But then the reason why it started originally, whether it was the Nehruvian philosophy, or whether it was the Ambedkarite philosophy, or whether it was even the Dravidian philosophy, all philosophies had this idea that, temples are quite wealthy, And that idea comes from people like Francis Xavier, who in his letter, which was dated 1545, he discusses that temples are full of gold and jewels. We must endeavor to possess them for the glory of God. And the God he's talking about here is the Christian God, right? So he wants to take the wealth of the temples and give it to the glory of God, or put it in use to the glory of God. And that's where it started. That's the root cause of why today Hindu temples are not free. And this is again a very, very targeted attempt on Brahmins, because primarily Brahmins are the gatekeepers of the Vaidika temples, right? We all know that there are Janapada temples and they have their own Janapada priests. But then Vaidika temples are primarily operated or run by Brahmins. So this is again another target. Although these Brahmins do not own any of these gold and jewels, right? Although they do not own, to target them, to take away their economic thing. Like for example, I am offering a deity some flowers. I'm offering a deity whatever upacharas that I do throughout the day. Where does the money come from? It comes from the gold and jewels. It comes from the lands that have been given to these Brahmins. It is called Manyam Bhumulu in Telugu, right? So those kinds of things they want to snatch away, right? And take them and use them for the glory of God. And that will again cause the destruction of Brahmins, right? This is one of the major hows of how they were targeting Brahmins. And again, from Indologist side, Bernard Cohn, he has written in the book Colonialism and its Forms of Knowledge. On page 45, he says, colonial interest in temple wealth and its systematic documentation has been done. And they were trying to appropriate this wealth for themselves. He has proven this once and for all. And this book is a very recent book, 1996, not too far away from us, right? So almost a must read for anyone who is interested in Indology from the Orientalophile side, right? So the second method through which they okay, here again, I've reiterated the same point. The immense wealth stored in Hindu temples attracted the attention of missionaries and colonial powers. But targeting Brahmins who often manage these temples, they aim to disrupt the religious and economic stability of Hindu society and redirect resources to Christian missions. Their ultimate agenda is to spread Christianity, replace Hinduism with Christianity. So for that, how to target Brahmins? This is one of the hows. And in the second how, I have also talked about the Goan Inquisition, right? The plan to get Brahmin women impregnated with Christian children by rape, torture, by whatever means, right? Historical evidence for this is very, very well documented. But just to give an idea here, I've given the Goa Inquisition by A.K. Priolkar. He has written, this book was written in 1961, and there itself, he's talking about the violence against Brahmin women, right? Including forced conversions, making them forcibly eat beef, sexual assault. Even in this picture is, by the way, by a Christian person. He drew this picture. He's a Portuguese Christian person who later came back into Sanatana Dharma. So in this picture, he is very clearly showing, right? The males are being stood up on some poles and they're being light upon fire, and the females are being dragged away from there, and they are later going to be, tortured if they don't accept the sexual assault by these missionaries. That was one of the hows of how they targeted Brahmins, right? Goan Inquisition, many people only think of it as a Hindu activity. It was primarily a Brahmin activity. The primary target there were Brahmins. And this was again mentioned by Dr. Charles Dellon in his book, right? The Inquisition in India, being an account of the Goa tribunal. He highlights the broader strategy here of targeting Brahmin families, specific families, right? They picked and chose those Brahmin families which were very influential to their cause, right? And that was done to undermine the continuity of Vedic traditions. These are the exact words Dr. Charles Dellon uses in his book. And this book is a very old book. This is not a recent book. This was written way back in the 1600s. So you can see by that time itself, they were very conscious of that kind of activity, what they were doing, right? And the brutal tactics included the rape and forced impregnation of Brahmin women, intending to sever the lineage and identity of the Brahmin Varna, thus weakening the custodians of Dharma and promoting Christianization. So this is the another how of how Christianity, or how missionaries basically targeted Brahmins in India. And how did this groundwork help non-Orientalophile Indologists who target Dharma and Indian nationalism? Today we are seeing that, right? There are many Indologists who are targeting Dharma and Indian nationalism, and all this groundwork was laid by these Christian missionaries who targeted Brahmins. For example, Reverend William Miller, in his speech published in the Madras Christian College magazine, advocated for targeting Hindu nationalism by undermining its religious foundations. See, Hindu nationalism cannot exist without its religious foundation, which is Dharma, which is Hinduism, right? Nationalism in itself in India is interwoven into the fabric of Dharma. So that's how he was targeting Reverend William Miller. And then in Thomas's book, Aryans and the British India, also, he discusses how Indologists often depicted Hinduism as a backward tradition, aligning with colonial efforts to justify their rule. Right? These were Indologists back then itself who were targeting, Indian nationalism, Hinduism, all this. And this kind of groundwork, the groundwork laid by missionaries and colonialists, facilitated the narrative that targeted Indian nationalism by attacking its Dharmic roots. The Dharmic root here is again coming back to the Brahmin identity. So targeting Brahmins is the main thing that they have to do to completely pluck us out of our Dharmic roots. Right? This aligns with a broader American agenda to weaken national identities globally. You see always Americans or all American university people, all American academics, they always talk about no nationality, right? Nationality without borders, be a global citizen. But then when you go to their country, you always see huge nationalistic effort that comes into picture. Why? Because they want to weaken all other national identities globally, while only American nationalism is preserved, right? And to do that also, these missionaries and these people, by targeting Brahmins, have laid the foundation for that, right? They always say caste was introduced by Brahmins, or this particular system was introduced by Brahmins, this repressive system was introduced by Brahmins. Whatever things, whatever narrative they want to push, Brahmins are the soft target, and that foundation has been laid by these missionaries, right? And by doing that, what do? By targeting the spiritual and cultural bedrock, Dharma, they primarily, which is primarily upheld by the Brahmins, they want to completely pluck us out of our Dharmic roots, right? So that is that. And then future, how do we move forward from this and how do we go ahead? So here, present day missionaries, what are they doing is what we should learn first, like a little bit of Shatrubodha here. So in the contemporary publication, the Wasam movement, which is Vision 2020, it was written way back in 2010. Now we have crossed 2020, but in this book, they have clearly mentioned that focusing missionary efforts on influential communities. What do they mean by influential communities? They don't mean some, land communities or farming communities. They meant Brahmins. And this is very clearly written on even on their website. This is the publication which is related to the website called joshua.com. So you can go there, you can see that. They particularly have a whole list of Brahmin communities who you can target, whether it is Vaidiki, whether it is Kayastha, whether it is, whatever else. And very specific verses from the Bible, using those verses, how you can convert these Brahmins. They have done this, and their sister organization is the one which, is running this publication. In that, they have mentioned this, they have to target influential communities to achieve greater conversions, right? Again, in another book, The Bible and the Empire, Post-Colonial Explorations, the author has discussed how modern missionaries continue to use colonial era strategies. And that is what is being actually seen here nowadays, right? In the colonial era, what they did was use Brahmins, target Brahmins, make Brahmins the soft target. The same thing is again getting repeated, and that was mentioned way back in like 2005 itself by the author, right? And targeting India's socio-religious elite. Again, current missionary activities leverage historical strategies targeting influential groups, not just Brahmins, like Brahmins, many others also, but primarily Brahmins, to break down the societal structure and to promote Christian values. This strategy aims to weaken the cultural and spiritual foundations of Hinduism, facilitating easier conversions. As you can see here, the person holding the book, he's studying how Christ died for his sins and Christ is the only way and all that, right? So these are the things that are being pushed into the minds of our children, right? Into the minds of Brahmin children, into the minds of, all other people all around, and seeing Christianity, oh, such a, noble religion. right? All this is now happening because the primary groundwork was originally laid by missionaries targeting Brahmins, right? And why? But then all this has happened, but why were they not successful, right? In 1800s itself, they noted down why they were not successful, right? They, in the book The History of Christianity in India by James Ho, he writes that it is noted that despite extensive efforts, the conversion rates among Brahmins remained low. And again, our famous Indologist, Miss Wendy, so in her book Hinduism and its Discontents, she writes the resilience of Hindu traditions, particularly among Brahmins, is highlighted as a key factor in resisting conversions, right? And the reasons here again, why were they not successful, is because among Brahmins there are many Brahmins even today and previously also. All our ancestors, they had very strong cultural identity, right? If we don't maintain this identity, and if we don't push forward this identity, and if we don't follow along with this identity and walk on the path that our ancestors have drawn for us, we will be a target of conversions, not us personally, but our future generations. Despite targeted strategies, the resilience and adaptability of Hindu practices help maintain the community's integrity, right? To maintain the integrity, adaptability here is not a complete change in what the scriptures are saying. It is more like adapting them to the time. Based on the kala, based on the desha, based on where you are living, based on the time you are living in, our strategies, our shastra can be adapted, and there are rules for it. Certain frameworks have already been given, and according to those frameworks, however, meticulously we can change them, we can and we will move forward changing them. And that's the reason they were unable to target Brahmins and successfully do more conversions in India. And what can Brahmins do today is, in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3:35, Bhagavan says, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swa anushtitata swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. The meaning here is given. It is more enjoyable to be ourselves than to pretend to be someone else. The duties born of our nature can be easily performed with stability of mind. The duties of others may seem attractive from a distance, and we may think of switching, but that is a risky thing to do. If they conflict with our nature, they will create disharmony in our senses, mind, and intellect. This will be detrimental for our consciousness and will hinder our progress on the spiritual path. And this is, by the way, the meaning has been written by me. It's not the exact word-to-word meaning. This is more of a meaning that came out of my understanding of what the verse is explaining here. And again, if you look at the person who has inspired me to come into this, Sitaram Goelji, in his book How I Became a Hindu, he discusses the importance of traditional education systems like Gurukulas in preserving Hindu culture and spiritual heritage. Here he's not only talking about Vaidika Gurukulas where there is, Vaidika Shastras or normal, Vaidika Vyavahara is taught. He's also talking about Kula Gurukulas. Every Kula has to have its own Gurukula. This modern education system has to be completely eradicated. That's the only solution to target these missionaries, to, give them back what they did to us, right? To protect against forced conversions and cultural erosion, it's crucial to replace modern education with traditional Kula Gurukulams. This shift will help preserve the cultural integrity of all communities, including Brahmins, by fostering a deep understanding and practice of Dharmic principles. If the rest of the communities also, not just Brahmins themselves, trying to preserve their own traditions, if the rest of the communities also participate in this revolution and embrace their own Kula Gurukulams and their own methodology, whatever it is available to them, right? Even if it's not their own Kula Gurukulam, by Varna, by choice of it, they can go and join another Gurukulam, get under a master and learn the art and craft and whatever it is they want to do, right? It could be modern things also. It's not just that it is something that, that was way back, or that is only limited to physical things. In the picture, you can see some people are studying on laptops, some people are, doing something in the farm, and some people are protecting wildlife, whatever, right? Whatever activities are there, they have to have a specific lineage and a methodology for that, and people have to go there and learn that, instead of using this modern education, which is one size fits all. That does not happen, right? So that is how Brahmins and other communities, along with Brahmins, can protect their own dharma. And for my research, a lot of my research for this article, for this presentation has come from my brother, Paturi, and the images I've taken from Pexels and Pixabay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sri Prabhav. It was a very passionate presentation on missionaries. Sri Mahalingamji from among the panelists has raised his hand. Sri Prabhu, can you remove your presentation from the
Yeah,
screen?
I'm just trying to do that. Give me a minute.
And Mahalingamji, did you intentionally raise your hand? If you did, please go ahead.
Yes, Ji. Just wanted to compliment Shri Prabhav Ji for a very informative and nicely articulated presentation. So, as he said, I think just one comment from my side is so long we have held on to our traditions and we have survived the onslaught on the civilization. So, I think it is now to focus on how somebody in a Veda Parsala who gets access to a smartphone will still continue to stay with the tradition. So, that is going to be the challenge facing his and the future generations. So, some more research needs to be done in that area. So again, compliments to him for a very good
Please
work.
switch on your video, Balaji ji.
I did that. It is not coming, Ji. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
your audio
Yeah.
is very clear, but video hasn't
Yeah.
come up.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all right. Thank you very much, Mahalingamji. And there are a few questions regarding Jatayuji's presentation. And and there are some for Prabhav also. For Prabhav, Arundhati Sundarji from Chinmaya University, her comment is, in the West, nationalism and patriotism are different, whereas in India we tend to think it is the same, so we tend to use. And she continued, the nationalism word, which is criticized as the cause of hyper-nationalism, leading that we saw in Germany. That is the reason, that is one of the strategies. They repeatedly show the example of Germany as an example of bad consequences of nationalism. Shri Prabhu, do you want to respond?
Yeah, so the words here, the semantics of the words, basically both nationalism and patriotism, they have their origin in Western thought itself, where there is a nationalism required because their religious ethos, their ethical ethos, it does not serve the purpose of nationalism, right? So patriotism is something that comes from the individual's own self, but nationalism is not that. Nationalism is something more of a ideology that needs to be inculcated within the individual. For someone living in India, he can be patriotic towards India, just salute the flag, but that's not enough, right? So the nationalistic aspect, ethos, it does not come from their own religious thing. For us, it is interwoven into the dharma, and that is what they want to remove. By targeting nationalism, they're targeting patriotism as well, at least as far as India is concerned, is what I would like to say on her comment.
Reshma ji is saying, excellent presentation, Sri Prabhu ji. A highly relevant topic that needs to be discussed extensively, especially the Goan Inquisition. We need to come up with effective strategies to counter it as they are attaining success at a faster pace now.
Yeah, as I've said, people can go ahead and read Bernard Cohen's book. It's a very, very important book for anyone who is interested in Indian history, especially from a Dharmic point of view. And within that book, within his, not just his book, even a lot of the older books where Goan Inquisition has been clearly documented, it says very clearly Brahmins are the primary target there, were the primary target there, and are now still. Even till today, that thing where they target Brahmins through whatever means is happening, and one of the primary places it is happening is in Goa. So yeah, it is a thing that we need to probably have another symposium on or something exclusively.
Arundhati Sundarji is suggesting that we should prefer the word patriotism rather than nationalism because they cannot target patriotism. And Radhakrishnan Ramanji is saying, are there any strategies to confine missionaries to run schools, to tracing members of their community as they continue to appropriate and dominate the mainstream educational system in terms of dissemination of knowledge and education in general?
Caste census would be the first thing, eradicating the whole idea and the concept of caste census, because that is the primary way for them to gain an understanding of who is living where and what kind of numbers are there. The second would be to stop allowing these missionaries into India, recognizing who is who, and because they roam around, they literally gather the data, they go to home, every house, and they gather the
Radhakrishnanji's question is about their schools. Missionary
their schools. Okay. Yeah. So schools is a different topic. I have actually already done a whole talk on this, almost a 45 minute talk on this, and how convent schools can be, changed into what we are, at least myself, I am calling Dharmic schools, right? Something like what Chinmaya Mission is doing, or even Ramakrishna Mission is doing. And such, at least, they have glimpses of dharmicness in them. So replacing those schools, to use a Christian word for this purpose, we should put the seeds of these schools and let them grow. And that's the only way to counter the convent education system where, through schools, they are converting children and they are laying the ground foundation for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sri Prabhav. And